any academic's favorite subject is how toxic academia is. Now, I try not to talk about it in terms of it being, completely horrible place to work. There are some really great components to being an academic, but unfortunately, the people inside the academic system can turn toxic for a whole range of reasons. And in this video, I want to talk about the top 6 reasons why academics turn so toxic and why it can become one of the most challenging workplaces that I ever worked at. Now, the first thing is that there is a very limited amount of money. Now, academics apply for grants throughout the year. Some academics spend 2 or 3 months of the year just applying for the big grants. Now, it is a lottery, there is no doubt. You can apply for the same grant using the same application with like a few little tweaks year after year, and then for some reason that year you get it. And it's that lottery that I think, first of all, just causes that weird addictive behavior in academics where, they try, and then they win. Some of the success rates of the high-profile grant funding schemes in Australia are as low as 10%. So there are a lot of academic hours that are put in to creating grants and they go nowhere. Now, one of my friends says academia is so toxic because the stakes are so low, and it's becoming lower and lower. The amount of money that's on offer is being restricted by governments, is being restricted by other funding bodies, and you've got all of these academics fighting over smaller and smaller, like a diminishing pot of money, and that brings out the worst. It brings out competition, it brings out backstabbing, all of these things. Now, you can talk about, I deserve this grant because I'm the best, I'm the first, we've got the most novel, and that breeds its own issues. We'll talk about that in another part of this video. This video is brought to you by my newsletter. Go check it out at andrewstoughton.com.au/newsletter. I'll put a link in the description. When you sign up, you'll get 5 emails, everything from the tools I use, my TEDx talk, the podcasts I've been on, how to write the perfect abstract, and more. It's exclusive content only available on that newsletter. You can unsubscribe at any time and sign up now. Why not? It's completely free. In academia, being first at something really matters. Now, when I was doing my solar cell studies, I was building on other people's work, but there are always little firsts within each field that you are competing for. The first to get a certain percentage efficiency, as in the case of my research, the first to get something to work, all of these things mean that you have a group of people who are competing. The fact that there is an ultimate winner really flies in the face of collaboration. Yes, collaboration to bring on skills that a team doesn't have does happen, and it's really common and it's great, but you are always competing with people who are doing the exact same thing as you. You do not share information that could actually help speed up academia. You are always trying to be known as that person that got that first thing, that person who discovered the thing that everyone now knows about. That is essentially the race you're on, and no one can control whether or not they are going to be that person that finds that thing that everyone recognizes them for. So you are always in this constant fight with your what should be quite a collaborative field. You should be collaborating with people who are doing the same thing as you so you can move faster, but being first matters. And I remember one of my supervisors saying to me, being first matters. No one remembers the second guy to do something. And that was kind of like ingrained in him, and it became part of my psyche for a bit. Like, well, I can't tell anyone about what I'm doing. I've got to make this worse. I've got to make this make this work. And unfortunately, that just leads to toxic behavior. Competition between clever people just leads to toxic relationships, no doubt. The third thing is that academics are compared all the time using metrics that were never designed to compare academics publicly, which leads to gaming. Now, I'm talking about the H index. There's also the I index. There's also other indexes. There's the altmetric index that looks at the societal impact, or at least the noise that your research is making in the real world. There are a ton of different metrics. These are often publicly available, which means that you can immediately compare yourself to other academics, which leads to feelings inside you of inferiority. You you just are always scared that you are not doing as much as someone else. Now, the thing about the world is there is always someone better, bigger, faster, just better than you in a certain way. But when you're an academic, you can find the people just by comparing the metrics, which are flawed in themselves for this purpose. And that leads to feelings inside that you don't understand, and therefore they come out as anger. They come out as unnecessary competitiveness. They come out as really horrible external expressions, because we can't just say I feel inferior and it scares me and I'm always scared that there's someone better than me and I feel like an imposter. We can't say that because that's not what academics do. At least that's not what my generation of academics did. And so yes, you've got this metric system which is always available for you to compare, and you're always looking up. You're always comparing up. Whenever you go into Google Scholar, you're always comparing up. You're always going, who's better than me? Why did they get there? Why can't I be there? Jealousy, anger, it all kind of folds into this toxic behavior, and then you start to become a little bit bitter and you start to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. Maybe you're a nice person outside, but in academia, you start to understand why people become toxic, because they want those metrics. They want to improve the number of papers, number of grants, and the only way to get there quickly is to do ethically questionable things. And that's what the system breeds, I think. I have had my fair share of really great supervisors and kind of okay supervisors. I've never had a terrible supervisor. But let me tell you something about every supervisor that I've had is that they have displayed toxic behavior at some point, every single one of them. And what I feel like is the university system rewards toxicity so that they can get promotions. It's all about how fast you can publish papers, which means if you are mad at someone and you force them to put your name on the paper, that increases your H index, even though maybe you don't deserve to be on that paper. But if you make enough of a scene, you can get pushed up there. Now, that pressure of always comparing yourself to others, I've had people threaten my job. One of my supervisors said to me, all right, get this result or else. And I am not someone who stands aside and lets someone, talk to me like that. I don't like toxic behavior. I always call it out when I see it. It's just part of my personality. And he said, yeah, get me that result or else. And I was like, or else what? And he was like, or else your job, like I'll fire you. And I was like, that is not how science works, and you cannot do that. I will not stand up for this. And I said that to him directly in front of other people. He became embarrassed, which meant initially he showed anger, but then they apologized a little bit later. Another thing is that, because there's different grants, people applying for grants, people review each other's grant proposals. It's meant to be secret, but I have heard of toxic behavior. Get this one. Someone put in a grant, it was sent out to anonymous reviewers, great, and then one of those anonymous reviewers approached that person and said, your grant will never get up. Like, that is not allowed. That is absolutely not allowed in the rules. You're meant to be anonymous. You're meant to be completely unbiased when looking across the different applications you're looking across. And you're certainly not allowed to go to that professor or that academic before the decision has been released and essentially tell them, no, your research grant was rubbish and I don't think it's going to get up. Absolutely toxic. What do you think that does to the person who's just applied? And also, what a power trip for that reviewer. Absolutely horrible behavior. Unfortunately, no one calls it out and they get kind of rewarded for that. The more unethical things you can do to get your name on paper, to make sure that you're the person on a grant funding application that gets money, like the more things you can kind of manipulate people, even with using force, like being angry and causing a scene, like the more your metrics go up. And so the system rewards that kind of behavior. Now, like I said, I've had some absolutely stellar supervisors throughout my time in academia, but all of them at some point has displayed toxic behavior because of the stress they feel they are under and the lack of emotional support for what is essentially a very kind of lottery-based promotion system. Academics sit between the university system as in like the vice chancellor, the deputy vice chancellor of research, all of that sort of stuff. They sit between them and the students. And guess what happens? In a university, the culture flows from the very top. And I have been in a number of universities where that culture has become increasingly toxic right from the very top. They are saying to their academics, get more papers, get more funding, pump out more students, be better in every way. And I guess what? These supervisors are just stuck in this weird like place where yes, they can do better and they are never like properly thanked for it. I've talked about it in other videos where they sometimes get a rubbish like morning tea with some stale cakes and some rubbish instant coffee. Like that's the sort of level of reward they get. They don't, or a piece of paper that's presented at this shit ceremony where they're like, oh, well done, you've just earned the university like millions of dollars. Oh well. And they always are asking what's next. What is next? What are you going to do more? One thing I learned about in academia is by looking upwards, I was always looking at people who were under more stress and more stress because yes, 20 papers last year, that's not enough. Let's try for 30 this year, 10 papers. What's next? Like there is never an end point in terms of what the university wants from the academics that it employs. Always more money. And then in Australia, at least, you get punished. You get punished by not being rewarded with PhD students, with not being rewarded with internal grants, and then that kind of starts this downward spiral of failure where academics end up teaching a lot more. Once they're teaching a lot more, the teaching and admin load gets massive, which means then they cannot focus on their research and it's just a downward spiral, and the university system creates that. So I often feel very sorry for supervisors and academics who are in between a very, very toxic culture that's, money-led business decisions and between students. And unfortunately, that toxic behavior flows through the academics sometimes to the students. And I think a lot of academics do incredibly well to actually shield their students from the majority of the rubbish that happens at the top of the university system. So yes, the university system doesn't stop toxic behavior, it rewards it and it creates a cycle of toxicity within its own system. One thing that's really important to notice about all of this, about academia, about entering the unknown, researching the most amazing things, the most niche things, is that it's all based on luck. Like if you have 1,000 researchers researching the same thing, some of them are going to get a little bit closer to the result they want than others. Now, this is the thing, is that no matter what, you can chuck loads of money at a researcher and they can go nowhere. And it doesn't matter what researcher they are. There's a few games people can play where in fact they've got the result, they applied for money to get the result, then they use that money to do another thing and they kind of hop. They're always one step ahead of the grant they're applying for. That's a game that I've seen academics play. But essentially, without that system, it's all down to luck. Give me money to do research because research really is trying to work out the unknown. I don't know if I'm going to get there or not, but this is how I think I'm going to get there. And sometimes you do get there. I mean, there are ways of increasing the amount of luck you've got, right? You can work more often. You can have more research students working on the same project. That is a way of increasing the amount of luck academics experience. Resources, how much resource, actual machines, how many brains, how many different special techniques you can place on that problem will help increase the luck. And unfortunately, what you end up with is this increasing gap of the academics that have and the academics that have not, because once they start on their luck train, boom, they can easily get up. They're getting results, they're getting their name in newspapers, the university's patting them on the back, it looks like it's great PR for the university, and then they start up. But until you have that lucky break, you can kind of sink down to the bottom. And I think it's something that a lot of researchers do not actually talk about enough, which is the reason they're there. There's a survivorship bias where they say the cream will rise to the top, i.e. I'm the cream, but they don't they don't talk about and they completely underplay the amount of luck that's involved in getting that initial kind of result that sort of upticks your career. And I've seen people then, as soon as that uptick, great, double down on that. They double down on it. Then it just kind of builds and builds and builds. But that initial luck factor means that some people will fail even if they've put in the same amount of work for the same amount of time with the same amount of money and postdocs and people working on the problem, and they will go nowhere. And it's just an unfortunate reality, and that just what creates a toxic behavior is the people that have had that lucky inflection in their career suddenly go, I'm here because I've earned this, and they forget about the luck component, and then they start being a bit of an asshole to people below them because they're like, I'm so great. Yes, you are great, but you're not as great as the people that failed. You just had a luck component or a little bit of privilege that got you there. Unfortunately, that is a reality of academia. So there we have it. There are the top 6 reasons why I think academia is so toxic. Let me know in the comments what you would add to that, but also go check out academiainsider.com. That's my project where I have my ebook, The Ultimate Academic Writing Toolkit, which has been getting a load of great reviews. Thank you so much for purchasing it and giving me some feedback. It's so awesome. And that's it. So I'll see you in the next video.